So, I want you to imagine, just for a second, walking into your child's bedroom at like 1:45 in the morning.
Oh, wow. I mean, that's already a tense premise right there.
Right. It's the middle of the night. And then you look down and you find a 20-year-old man hiding under the bed.
Yeah, your primal instinct in that exact moment is just going to be to protect.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an immediate, completely visceral reaction. Anyone would feel that.
Absolutely. But the really complex part here is that in the state of Tennessee, the line between being a protective parent and, well, a first-degree murderer can be incredibly thin.
Yeah, it's wild. It can literally be crossed in the exact amount of time it takes to walk from a bedroom down to a front porch.
Which is exactly what we're unpacking today. It is this profound legal and psychological collision.
It really is. Today we are doing a deep dive into a really heavy, deeply unsettling event out of Memphis, Tennessee.
Right, specifically in the Walker Homes neighborhood, right?
Yeah, exactly. The details are tough. A 20-year-old named Rodderius Morton was shot and killed, and a 36-year-old mother, Kendra Scott, is now sitting in a cell facing first-degree murder charges.
And to really figure out how we got to this point, we've pulled together a ton of primary and secondary sources for this deep dive.
Yeah, we're looking at the official Memphis Police Department affidavits, the ongoing Shelby County case tracking data, and, a lot of the immediate on-the-ground reporting.
Right, from major local stations like WREG, News Channel 3, FOX 19, ABC 24, and FBox 13 Memphis.
Exactly. So our mission here is to basically act as investigators right alongside you. We want to meticulously reconstruct the timeline of what happened that early Thursday morning on Travis Road.
And beyond just the timeline, I mean, we really need to translate the legal codes here. We have to look at the chilling statements made by the accused and analyze the physical geography of the confrontation.
Yeah, because we have to explain exactly why the justice system looks at this specific set of facts and says, this is a first-degree murder charge, not just a justifiable homicide.
And just as a quick note for everyone listening, if you are looking for outside commentary from, like, the broader community or extended family, you actually won't find it in our sources today.
Right, yeah. The material we have doesn't really rely on outside opinions at all.
No, it is entirely anchored by the physical evidence and this one central, honestly devastating piece of testimony from the juvenile daughter.
Because her statement to the police isn't just some minor detail, It is literally the absolute linchpin of the state's case.
Everything revolves around what she heard, what she did, and what she witnessed that night.
Exactly. So to really understand how this ends with a fatal gunshot on a front lawn, we kind of have to start inside the house.
Right, at the exact moment that baseline of normalcy was completely shattered.
Okay, so let's pull the timeline back to 1:45 a.m. on Thursday. The setting is Walker Homes, which, if you don't know it, is a pretty dense established neighborhood in Memphis.
Right. So Kendra Scott arrives home. She walks into her juvenile daughter's bedroom.
And there, hidden beneath the bed, is 20-year-old Rodderius Morton.
I mean, the initial phase of this encounter has to be just pure chaos.
Oh, totally. Just sheer panic.
Yeah, and from a legal perspective, if you are a homeowner discovering an adult hiding in your child's room in the middle of the night, I mean, that grants you an incredibly wide latitude for self-defense.
Because the law recognizes the inherent terror of that exact moment, right?
Exactly. The initial assumption you're allowed to make is that this is an intruder, a predator, like a severe and immediate threat to your life.
But the narrative from the police affidavit takes a very sharp turn, like almost immediately after this.
It really does.
Because when the police actually arrive on the scene, the juvenile daughter reveals a secret that completely shifts the entire legal framework of why Morton was even there.
Right, because he didn't actually break in.
No, he didn't. The daughter admitted to the officers that she had invited him inside earlier that night.
And see, that secret invitation fundamentally alters the starting point of the whole legal analysis.
How so? Like, practically speaking?
Well, Morton is no longer an unknown forced entry intruder. He is an invited guest of the juvenile.
Even if it was a secret guest.
Yeah, albeit a secret one. But it creates this highly complex trespassing scenario rather than a standard, terrifying home invasion.
But even that nuance, I mean, it gets instantly overshadowed by what the daughter tells the police next.
Oh, absolutely. This is the part that really changes everything.
Yeah, this is the quote from the affidavit that just stops you in your tracks. The daughter tells the investigating officers that her mother, Kendra Scott, had actually previously warned her about this exact scenario.
A very specific warning.
Right. Scott told her daughter that if she ever brought a boy into the house, She would, and this is a direct quote from the police document, put a hole in his abate.
And when prosecutors are sitting at their desk reading an affidavit and they see a quote like that, the entire trajectory of the case solidifies immediately.
So they're looking for intent, right?
Exactly. In criminal law, you are always searching for mens rea, which is basically the guilty mind, the criminal intent.
So that one single sentence from the daughter totally transforms the mother's actions.
It does. It takes it from 1:45 a.m. being a spontaneous reaction born of just, sheer panic, and turns it into the potential execution of a premeditated plan.
See, I have a hard time wrapping my head around how the law treats that kind of language, though.
Oh, it's definitely a controversial area.
Yeah, because if you put yourself in the jury box right now, you really have to weigh human nature against strict legal definitions. Parents use hyperbole all the time.
They absolutely do.
Like a frustrated parent might say, if you sneak out with the car again, I'm going to kill you, or if you fail this class, you're dead meat.
Right, right.
Those are just harsh, exaggerated threats used to enforce household boundaries. So how on earth does the legal system distinguish between a colorful, angry parenting threat and, actual cold-blooded criminal intent?
Well, that is the exact battleground where the defense is going to try to plant their flag.
Because they have to argue it was just a figure of speech, right?
Yeah, exactly. You are highlighting the core difference between a casual figure of speech and a declaration of intent. And the law actually does recognize that humans use hyperbole.
Okay, so it's not an automatic conviction just because of the words.
No, definitely not. If a mother says, I'll kill you if you fail math, and then tragically the child dies in a completely unrelated accident the next day, no prosecutor is ever going to use that statement as evidence of murder.
Right, because there's no connection.
Exactly. This statement has to connect logically and mechanically to the actual act.
So the threat basically has to perfectly mirror the outcome.
It has to mirror it, yeah. But more importantly, intent is rarely proven by just words in a vacuum. It is proven by the physical actions that immediately follow the discovery and how those actions align with the prior statement.
Okay, I see.
Because the prosecution is going to argue that this wasn't just some generalized, frustrated, hyperbolic statement. It was highly specific. If you bring a boy in, I will shoot him. And then, when a boy was brought in, she literally shot him.
Wow, yeah. The alignment is almost too perfect for the prosecution to just ignore. It basically takes away the defense of, I was blinded by panic, and replaces it with, I was fulfilling a promise.
That's exactly how they will frame it. And to figure out which of those two mental states Kendra Scott was actually in, investigators aren't going to just rely on the daughter's quote alone.
Right, they have to look at the physical evidence of what actually happened next.
They have to map out the entire geography of the house. They really want to see if the physical movement reflects a terrified homeowner desperately defending herself against an advancing threat, or someone who is deliberately executing a pre-stated punishment.
Which pulls us right into the whole escalation phase of this timeline. Because the discovery under the bed is really just the ignition point, isn't it?
It's just the start, yeah.
Right, from the affidavit, we know a verbal argument erupts immediately after Scott finds Morton. She immediately orders him to leave the house.
And ordering an unauthorized person to leave your home is, frankly, the legally correct and logical first step.
But the crucial evidence here is the geographical progression of that argument, right? Because it doesn't stay confined to the bedroom.
No, it moves.
The local reports detail this movement super clearly. The confrontation moves from the juvenile's bedroom out into the interior hallways of the house, toward the front door, and eventually out onto the front porch facing Travis Road.
Right. And just, think about the psychological and legal implications of that movement.
It's significant.
It's massive. Every single step they take from that bedroom toward the front porch is a step where the immediate acute danger to the juvenile daughter is actively decreasing.
Let me try to visualize this with an analogy, actually, because I think it helps clarify the legal threshold here for anyone listening.
Yeah, absolutely. Go for it.
Think of the castle doctrine, which is, the legal right to use lethal force to protect your home. Think of it like a legal umbrella.
Okay, I like that.
That umbrella only covers you while it's raining. And in this context, the rain is an active, imminent, unavoidable threat of death or serious bodily harm.
Right, the immediate danger.
Yeah, so when you find a strange man under your child's bed, it is pouring rain. You are fully covered by that umbrella.
Completely covered, yes.
But as Morton gets out from under the bed, as he walks down the hallway, as he moves through the living room and finally steps out onto the front porch, he is complying with the order to leave.
Yes.
He is taking the threat out with him. The moment he turns his back and walks out the door, the rain basically stops. And if you pull the trigger then, you're stepping completely out from under that legal umbrella.
That is a phenomenal way to frame it, honestly, because it perfectly isolates the concept of an imminent threat.
Because the threat has to be active, right?
Exactly. The castle doctrine, especially in a state like Tennessee, provides really robust protections for homeowners, but it is definitely not a license to kill trespassers under any and all circumstances.
Right, it's not a free pass.
No, the law requires that your fear of imminent peril be reasonable. If the person is actively moving toward the exit, if they are actively leaving the domain of the home, the law generally views the imminent peril as subsiding.
And that geographical reality brings us to the fatal moment. Because Morton actually does reach the front porch, he's at the threshold of the outside world.
He is leaving.
He is, but he doesn't make it off the property. As they reach that front porch, Kendra Scott fires her weapon, Morton is killed, and his body is eventually found lying in the front yard.
And this is really where the physical evidence locks in the first-degree murder charge, completely overriding any initial presumption of self-defense.
Because of the location of the wound, right?
Yes. It is the specific location of the gunshot wound. According to the sources, Rodderius Morton was shot in the back of the head.
I really want to pause on that detail, because it is probably the single most damning piece of physical evidence in the entire case file. The back of the head.
It changes everything. Let's apply that to your legal umbrella analogy. If a homeowner is backing away from an intruder, facing them, maybe they're trapped in a hallway, terrified the intruder's about to lunge and strike, and they fire a weapon.
That's a classic self-defense narrative.
Exactly. And the physical evidence, like a frontal wound, would corroborate the story of a face-to-face unavoidable threat. But a gunshot wound to the back of the head tells a completely divergent physical story.
It fundamentally rewrites the entire narrative.
Yeah.
Because it means the target was facing away.
Right.
It means they were yielding. They were in retreat.
Exactly. You literally cannot claim you are in reasonable fear of an imminent deadly attack from someone who is facing the opposite direction and walking out of your house.
It just doesn't make logical sense.
It doesn't. When you use lethal force on someone who is actively disengaging and fleeing, the legal argument for self-defense or the castle doctrine evaporates. You transition from a defender to an aggressor in the eyes of the law.
Wow. And the contrast in the moments immediately following the gunshot is also incredibly revealing.
Oh, the statement.
Yeah, we have two very different statements made by Kendra Scott, documented in the reporting, and they show a massive psychological shift.
They really do.
First, you have the immediate, visceral reaction. It's like 2 a.m. Gunshots are incredibly loud. Neighbors are waking up. Witnesses in Walker homes actually report seeing Scott standing in the yard holding the firearm and frantically repeating the phrase, "I shot him, I shot him."
That initial statement is fascinating to me. I shot him. It is just a raw declaration of fact.
There's no spin on it yet.
Right. It completely lacks any legal padding. From a psychological standpoint, it often indicates shock. The adrenaline is crashing. The pressurized environment of the home has just violently spilled out onto the public street. And her brain is simply verbalizing the overwhelming reality of the action that just occurred.
It's almost a realization of the horror of what she just did. It's unfiltered.
Unfiltered, exactly.
But then the timeline moves forward. The Memphis police arrive. The scene is locked down. Scott is detained. She's separated from the scene, and she's questioned. And later, according to the official police affidavit, she makes a distinctly different statement to the officers.
A very different statement.
She tells them, "I did what I had to do."
I did what I had to do. Just notice the profound structural shift in that sentence compared to "I shot him."
It's no longer just a statement of fact. It's a justification.
Precisely. It is a rationalization. When someone says, "I did what I had to do," they are actively asserting that their action was necessary, unavoidable, and therefore legally or morally permissible.
They're trying to build a defense.
They are attempting to retroactively apply that legal umbrella of self-defense to their actions.
But I'm really trying to square that justification with the physical evidence we just discussed. I mean, how does a defense attorney even attempt to protect a client who offers a post-incident statement like, "I did what I had to do," when the autopsy report is going to show a bullet hole in the back of a fleeing man's head?
It's an incredibly tough spot.
Because you don't have to shoot a retreating person in the back of the head to protect yourself, right?
Yeah.
The physical evidence fundamentally breaks the logic of her own defense.
Which is exactly why the initial investigators completely bypassed lesser charges like manslaughter and went straight to the top of the penal code.
Right, to first-degree murder.
Yes. This contradiction between her claim of necessity and the physical reality of an execution-style wound on a fleeing victim is what transforms this from a chaotic, tragic domestic altercation into a severe, high-level criminal prosecution.
Let's talk about those charges, actually, because the legal reality Kendra Scott is facing today is absolute. She wasn't just given a citation or taken in for questioning and released.
No, not at all.
She was arrested at the scene, and she is officially charged with first-degree murder.
Yes, first-degree murder, which is, the most severe homicide charge available under Tennessee law. And she faces a secondary, heavily consequential charge, too, employing a firearm during the commission of a dangerous felony.
I'm looking at this second charge, employing a firearm during a felony. To a layperson, that sounds totally redundant.
I know it does.
Because if you are charged with shooting someone to death, obviously you used a firearm. Why do prosecutors stack charges like this? Is it just a negotiation tactic to force a plea deal? Or does it serve a specific mechanical purpose in the courtroom?
It actually serves a very rigid mechanical purpose regarding sentencing. It's what is known as a statutory enhancement or an add-on charge.
Okay.
In many jurisdictions, legislators have basically decided that committing a crime is bad, but committing that same crime with a gun is exponentially worse because of the inherent, extreme danger to the public.
Okay, that makes sense.
So the dangerous felony in this case is the first-degree murder itself. By adding the firearm charge, the state is essentially triggering a separate mandatory minimum sentence that must be served consecutively.
Meaning back to back.
Right, back to back with whatever sentence she receives for the murder.
So it basically guarantees a significantly longer time behind bars if they secure a conviction, stripping away the judge's leeway to give a lighter concurrent sentence.
Exactly. It's a tool to ensure maximum penalization. But the anchor of this entire case, obviously, is that first-degree murder charge.
Let's break down the mechanics of first-degree murder, because I think the public perception of this charge is heavily skewed by movies and television.
Oh, without a doubt.
When most of us hear first-degree murder, we picture, like a hitman or someone buying a life insurance policy and spending 6 months secretly poisoning their spouse's coffee.
Right, the slow poisoner.
Yeah, it implies a long, drawn-out, cold, calculated plan. So how does a chaotic, shocking discovery under a bed at 1:45 in the morning turn into a first-degree murder charge?
That is a crucial distinction to make. The law's definition of premeditation is vastly different from the Hollywood definition.
Okay.
In Tennessee, premeditation does not require weeks of planning. It doesn't require a corkboard with red string and pushpins. The legal threshold for premeditation simply requires that the intent to kill was formed prior to the act itself, and that the act was committed after the exercise of reflection and judgment.
Reflection and judgment. But, how much time does that require? Could she have formed that intent in the 10 seconds it took to walk down the hallway?
Legally, yes. The courts have repeatedly held that premeditation can be formed in an instant. It just requires that the mind was capable of thinking about the act, deciding to do it, and then actually doing it.
Wow.
However, the prosecutors in Shelby County don't even have to rely on a theoretical 10-second window in the hallway. They have a much stronger, much earlier anchor for premeditation.
Right, they're going to link it back to the daughter's statement.
Exactly. They're going to link this charge directly back to that specific warning.
The warning. If you bring a boy in, I will put a hole in him.
Yes. The state will argue that she didn't form the intent in the hallway at 1:45 a.m. She formed the intent days, weeks, or months ago when she established that household rule and attached a lethal consequence to it.
That is intense.
It is. They will argue that the prior warning proves she had already reflected on this specific hypothetical scenario. She had judged what her response would be, and on that Thursday morning, she simply executed the pre-existing plan.
That is a terrifying legal framework, honestly.
Yeah.
It basically takes all the emotion out of the moment of discovery and recasts the entire event as the fulfillment of contract.
And when you combine that stated intent, the warning, with the physical actions, shooting a retreating victim in the back of the head, the physical evidence perfectly supports the theory of a deliberate execution of a threat, rather than a panic in-the-moment response to a sudden attack.
If I am sitting across the table from Kendra Scott as her defense attorney right now, I am looking at a seemingly insurmountable mountain of evidence.
It is a staggering amount of evidence.
You have a client who freely admitted on the record to police, I did what I had to do, placing the motivation squarely on her own shoulders.
Mm-hmm.
You have witnesses who saw her holding the gun standing over the victim. You have a bullet wound that functionally destroys a standard self-defense claim. And You have her own daughter providing the state with the exact quote needed to prove premeditation. What is the legal strategy here? Can a defense even be built on these facts, or are you just immediately looking to mitigate the damage?
It is an incredibly restrictive position for a defense attorney, for sure. As we discussed, the Castle Doctrine is fundamentally neutralized by the fact that the victim was fleeing,
Yeah,
and the client's own words undermine an identity defense, meaning she can't say someone else did it. She already admitted she did it.
right, I shot him.
Exactly. When the standard defenses are stripped away like that, the defense often has to pivot from arguing the facts of the event to arguing the psychology of the event.
Meaning they try to attack the first-degree element rather than the murder element.
Precisely. The goal shifts from seeking an outright acquittal to seeking a lesser-included offense, like second-degree murder or voluntary manslaughter.
Okay, so how do they do that?
Well, to do that, the defense might explore arguments around a crime of passion or adequate provocation.
Right.
They would try to argue that finding a grown man under your child's bed produces a state of mind so devoid of reason and so flooded with sudden, intense passion that true premeditation is just impossible, regardless of whatever hyperbolic threats were made in the past.
But even that strategy is kneecapped by the geography,
Exactly.
because it wasn't a sudden instinctual trigger pull right there in the bedroom.
Yeah.
There was an argument. There was a walk down the hallway. There was a walk through the living room.
You're seeing the problem.
The prosecution will argue that walk provided ample time for the sudden passion to cool, right? And for reflection and judgment to take over before they even reach the porch.
You're thinking exactly like a prosecutor right now. That walk down the hallway is what the state will call the cooling off period. They will argue that every single step toward the front door was an opportunity to de-escalate, an opportunity to just lock the door behind him and call the police. Pulling the trigger on the porch shows deliberate choice, not sudden passion.
And what complicates all of this for the defense, and really the legal system as a whole, is that these highly detailed, incredibly damning facts, I mean, the daughter's quote, the bullet wound, the hallway walk, these didn't stay locked away in a sealed police file for a year while lawyers prepared for trial.
No, not at all.
They were immediately broadcast to the entire city of Memphis, which brings us to the whole information ecosystem surrounding this case.
The speed at which this information entered the public domain is a critical component of modern legal proceedings.
We are dissecting this case using reports from WRRG, FOX 19, ABC 24, and FOX 13. These stations aren't just giving a generic 30-second news brief saying a woman was arrested for a fatal shooting on Travis Road.
Right, they have all the details.
They are actively disseminating the exact granular contents of the police affidavit within, like, 24 to 48 hours of the trigger being pulled.
Right.
How does that happen so fast?
It happens because of how local journalism interacts with the mechanics of the justice system, specifically regarding public records and sunshine laws.
Right.
When police make an arrest, they cannot just hold someone indefinitely. They have to file an affidavit of complaint. This document outlines the initial facts and the probable cause that basically justifies the arrest to a judge.
Okay, so it's a required document.
Yes. And in Tennessee, and in most jurisdictions, honestly, once that affidavit is filed with the court clerk, it becomes a matter of public record.
It basically transitions from a private police document to a public document essentially overnight.
Overnight, yes. And experienced court reporters and journalists, they know exactly how to pull these documents the moment they hit the clerk's desk. They are legally entitled to them. So, within hours of Kendra Scott's arraignment, reporters have the entire narrative framework that the police are building. They have the geography, the timeline, the witnesses, and most critically, the direct quotes.
If you're putting yourself in the jury box right now, this creates a massive systemic tension.
Yeah.
We have a fundamental right in this country to a fair trial by an impartial jury.
We do.
But how do you find an impartial jury in Shelby County when the local evening news has already broadcasted the phrase, put a hole in his AD to half the city? I mean, the jury pool is essentially swimming in the prosecution's evidence before the defense has even filed their first motion.
This is the phenomenon of the parallel court of public opinion. It is fully formed before the actual legal process even begins. The media cycle digests a tragedy in hours.
Right.
It broadcasts the most visceral, sensational details because, let's be honest, a mother threatening her child's secret guest is objectively sensational news.
It's impossible to unhear that quote. If you live in Memphis and you saw that on ABC 24 while eating dinner, that detail is seared into your brain.
Exactly. And while judges will strictly instruct a seated jury to only consider the evidence formally presented inside the four walls of the courtroom, human psychology is notoriously difficult to compartmentalize.
People can't just forget what they heard on the news.
They can't. The community narrative is already crystallized. A mother executed a young man for breaking a household rule.
And it's not just the broad, macro-level news audience either. The localized reality of the neighborhood amplifies this so much.
It really does.
Walker Homes is described in the sources as a pretty dense neighborhood. This didn't happen on a remote 10-acre farm out in the county where no one could hear. It happened on a front lawn in a populated area.
The role of proximity in urban and suburban environments cannot be overstated here. You have neighbors who were physically awakened by the gunshot.
Right.
They looked out their windows, they stepped out onto their own porches, they visually witnessed the immediate aftermath. They saw the mother standing there with the gun, they heard her yelling, "I shot him!"
So you have this intense, localized neighborhood trauma and gossip merging seamlessly with the macro-level news broadcasting the official police affidavit. The information saturation is just total.
It is. The pressure from inside that house didn't just spill onto the lawn on Travis Road. It essentially flooded the entire media market of Memphis in a matter of hours.
Yeah.
But here is the ultimate paradox of the true crime ecosystem. The information moves at lightning speed, but the justice system it describes moves at a glacial pace.
Right. The news trucks pack up, the satellite feeds are cut, and the stations just move on to the next breaking story by the weekend. But the reality of a first-degree murder charge is just settling in for the people involved.
This case will likely take years to fully resolve in the Shelby County courts.
Years.
Oh, absolutely. There will be months of discovery, pretrial motions, suppression hearings, potential plea negotiations, and eventually a trial or an appeal. The speed of the initial information dump does nothing to lessen the grueling, drawn-out weight of the actual legal consequences.
Which brings us to the core of what we set out to do today. By pulling these sources apart, we can see exactly how the machinery of the justice system works beneath the surface of a headline.
Exactly.
We started with the concept of a household boundary, a mother telling a daughter, "No boys allowed." It is a mundane, everyday rule. But in this specific environment, that rule was underwritten by a specific lethal threat.
And we tracked the timeline from a terrifying early morning discovery at 1:45 a.m., and we saw how the initial legal protection of the home, that Castle Doctrine umbrella, was methodically dismantled by physical movement.
Right, we followed the argument out of the bedroom, down the hallway, and onto the front porch.
We examined the physical evidence that ultimately dictates the charges. A 20-year-old man, Rodderius Morton, shot in the back of the head while retreating.
And we analyzed the post-incident statements of a 36-year-old mother, Kendra Scott, whose attempt to justify the shooting with "I did what I had to do" directly contradicted the forensic reality of the crime scene.
It is the synthesis of all those specific elements. The prior warning, the physical pursuit, and the location of the fatal wound that provides the legal architecture for the state of Tennessee to pursue a first-degree murder conviction.
Yeah.
It really demonstrates how premeditation isn't always a long, shadowy conspiracy. Sometimes it is simply the split-second execution of a prior promise.
But as we close this deep dive, we have to look past the legal architecture and the media coverage to the most devastating, unspoken reality buried in these police affidavits. Throughout this entire analysis, we've talked almost exclusively about the mother and the victim. But there was a third person in that house.
The juvenile daughter?
Think about the unimaginable psychological weight that she is now carrying. She is a teenager who made a choice to break a rule and invite someone inside.
Right.
That secret invitation was the catalyst for the entire event. She was present for the terrifying discovery. She witnessed the immediate escalation in her own safe space.
And ultimately, when the police arrived, she was the one who had to tell them about her mother's warning. Her honesty with the investigating officers provided the exact quote the state needed to elevate the charge to first-degree murder. She is fundamentally the state's star witness against her own mother.
How does a family ever recover from that? I mean, how does a young mind even begin to process the reality that her secret resulted in a young man's death, and her testimony might put her mother in prison for the rest of her life?
It's an incredibly heavy burden to bear.
The legal system will eventually resolve the criminal charges in Shelby County, but the human fallout of what happened on Travis Road is permanent. It is a haunting reminder of how quickly the sanctuary of a home can be irrevocably destroyed from the inside out. Definitely something to think about as you go through your day.